Professor Ann Goldberg, who teaches anthropology here at Hendrix, and Professor Maxine Payne, who is a photographer and is an art professor here at Hendrix. So, without further ado, Maxine Payne and Ann Goldberg.
My grandfather came to San Luis looking for land. He found a lot of space here, and he communicated to his children, and they agreed to come with the family to what God created. They had nowhere to live, nothing. They say there was a little ranch below near the river, only one little ranch, and then they began to cut down the trees in order to plant plantains and coffee. Little by little, more of everything. It was very difficult because at first they didn't have anything to eat. They say, till the harvest did not produce anything. It was very difficult, but at that time there was a lot of hunting and gathering food from the forest. And the majority of the food was hunted in the mountains. Agoutis, monkeys, howler monkeys, whatever they found, turkeys. It was very difficult, but, well, already my father had many cows, a lot of coffee, and he could make our house better. We had a roof of boards. It was very emotional when for the first time my father put a zinc roof on the house. We all loved to hear the sound of the rain on the roof. It was very moving, yes. I have 7 children, 3 girls and the rest boys. All of my children were born here, except for 3 who were born in the city, in the hospital. The others I had at home. It's a very big risk because one doesn't know if one can, or if one will die, or the child will die. Many died truly because no one gave aid to the women. I had 11 children. The others have died. What I have are 7. Perhaps this is the truth because there was no doctor, no health clinic. When I had my first child, I was 15 years old. It was very hard. And in the home, when there was a labor pain, we had to walk. We would go to see if there was a car in Bajo to take us to Punta Arenas. Many women, friends of mine, had their baby on the road. It was very hard. When I gave birth to my last daughter, I was washing in what we call a quedabrita, truly on a stone slab. I washed and washed until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I would hang up the clothes to dry, you see. I felt my first pain of my last daughter. My husband was working, and I was afraid because I was alone with my 2 little girls because they were very close together in age. I felt the first pain, and then I hurried and hung up the clothes. I had left the clothes without hanging them up to dry. I was inside hurrying to make food for my husband who was coming home, right? I was hoping he would get home quickly. I was alone and I couldn't leave my girls alone to go get someone, and the nearest neighbor was a long way off. I was anxious. I was very quick. It was 2 hours later that I had my daughter.
The advice that was given to me when I was first married to Warner was, don't learn to milk a cow. Most of the ranch women told me that because you'll be left at home milking while he's off doing other stuff. But I knew what I was getting into. Now, if I was talking to somebody who was going to marry a rancher, you'd better be sure that you like what he's doing because he's not going to change for you. He has his ranch job and he's going to be doing that and needing your help. And so you need to be prepared for the long haul with what he has to do because that's his life and he's not going to quit and move to town for her, you know. And we have some, I mean, after people get married and she's miserable and says, you know, I don't want any part of this. They need to know what they're getting into. It's really glamorous dating this rancher, this cowboy and all this stuff, but you're not paying attention to what's happening at home. I remember the body we found was a woman, alone in a very isolated spot among the sandpaper bush and limestone rocks. To this day, no one has come to look for her, to collect her remains. Well, they say she was probably with a group they had left her and had to keep going or they would get caught and sent back home. Another day, my husband discovered a group, a blind man, a pregnant woman, and a child whose guide had left them. The blind man told him about signing over their land for a fee to pay a guide to take them to the place. And once there, the guide simply left them, miles from any phones, water, or highways. There are just so many brutal stories. You can't just look at any one person and say, "Be gone off my land, you don't belong." It's overwhelming, all the various aspects, all the stories behind what brought them to where they are, and the fact that they don't know where it is they'll end up, or if anyone will ever know what became of them in the end. Politicians always say build more wall. Go to the hospital, see the people every day who come to the hospital who've broken a limb climbing over the wall. The wall, if you drive along the border here, it's got doors everywhere. You go along with a nice cutting torch and you carefully cut along the seams. Set it aside. Certain people rush through. You set it back, and the Border Patrol, they don't see it. They come along and weld it back, and a week later, down the road, there's another one. Drive along, and you'll see them all along. The Border Patrol picks them up every day. It doesn't work. The separation of families is worse than most people know, but there's still an incredible love and friendship that crosses the border. I'm not unique. There are all these people who have families and friends who are trying day by day to get past it. It's been so much my personal story. It's the home of my heart. I'll travel, I'll do other things, I'll leave often, but I'll come back. Now, after all my years, I like it here. Mexico is a family thing. It's a home. I'm married for choice, not in an arrangement. We had a very simple wedding, not a big wedding like you see today. My first 4 children are from that marriage. I was his first wife, but then he had 2 others. He hit us all. He was abusive. We split up, and now he has no wives because of how he acts. I met my second partner. He had another wife who died. He said that she died of tuberculosis. Then I found out I had HIV. I was very open about it and told him right away. He was not so open. He left me after that. I was open about it, but he wasn't. My last 2 children I had with men who did not stay. My parents were born in Colombia. My grandfather came here in chains as a slave. I didn't know my grandmother. I was born in 1976. My parents have died, and all my sisters have died. When I was younger, my intelligence hadn't fully formed. Now I know the difference between good and bad. I've known a good life, and I've known a hard, bad life. My advice to young women is to protect themselves. Don't have unsafe sex. There are a lot of problems related to unsafe sex. There have been changes since I was a child. There are big differences. Back then, no one had a television. People sat and talked with each other about the future. Now the future comes out of the TV. We don't have a television, but sometimes we pay a neighbor to watch theirs. Developments has brought phone lines that can provide for the transfer of money. The road, the schools, the hospital are all new developments. Electricity and water will be coming soon. In the past, people didn't die of AIDS, they died of water. The roads would flood, and then people couldn't get around, and they couldn't afford to make a trip for their medicine. They died of water. If I could give advice, I would say, don't buy a condom like it's something strange. Buy it like it was sugar. Take your medicine like it's Tylenol. Do not be ashamed. I visit with my women friends about twice a month. If I'm sick, then we visit more. I don't really have any friends here yet. My girlfriends live far away. You know, there are good girlfriends and bad girlfriends. The bad girlfriends are gossips. I have one true girlfriend.
I'll tell a story about the war against the French. The Vietnamese officials in that period when the French started arriving, those officials moved from the commune to go live in the war zone. But at night they came back to scout, to listen in on news. I was 17 years old. And when they came back, I would guard for them or go mobilize people who could be trusted to teach them things so that they too can join the movement. One night around 10 o'clock, I heard a French soldier walking about 10 meters away. He had his cologne on, and the fragrance was really strong. I was far away, and yet I could still smell his cologne. I told the group to stay there, or else the guards might capture us. So then 2 of us started running and lighting our way at the same time. When we were about 10 meters away, he saw us more clearly and he started shouting. We had run over to the guard to make him yell at us so the Vietnamese officials would hear his French voice and know to flee. There was no other good way to make the signal ourselves. If we started making noises, we might just get shot right away and the Vietnamese officials might not get the message. During the war, a bomb would explode near the house, only 2 meters away, and there would be about 25 people in the house, yet no one died. I used to get buried in the tunnels, and they had to pull me up. When I gave birth back then, during wartime, there were difficulties. War was one thing, economics was the other. When I had a new baby, I didn't even have any shirts to put on him. Our neighbors had to give the baby a shirt to wear. It was that miserable. At age 21, I got married and bore 5 daughters. Then the first one, after her betrothal ceremony, they were on their way to Dong Quang when they passed away in an accident. The guy was lost on the spot. Then my daughter was sent to the hospital in Hue, and still she could not survive. I was 119 pounds, but I lost 20. I lost 2 children, so I lost 20 pounds. I was so sad that I cried for 3 years, always crying. I cried until my vision became blurry, until they had to tell me to stop crying because if I cried anymore, I would be blind and could not see where to walk anymore. The girl, I still have a lot of pictures of her. Her letters are here in one complete pile. I haven't burned them. The saddest memory was the sorrow about my daughter. The second saddest is the sorrow about my husband. He often goes out and is promiscuous. He goes and comes back, and apologizes. He apologizes, and then I also forgive, because I think Vietnamese women are rich in forgiveness. So I forgave, kept forgiving and forgiving to the end. I thought I would never forgive again, but he still came back, still apologized properly to both me and the children, still pleaded for forgiveness. And then he promised a very grave promise, so I let it go. So we start over. Let him start over, so we have the children, the grandchildren. If I stretch it out, I have nothing to gain, but only lose. Lose my husband, my children, my grandchildren. If we split up, I will be only even sadder. So I was still determined to forgive, to settle family affairs. The letters from my oldest daughter are still there. I read them, and I can't hold back my tears. She begged me, told me not to give him up. If he was wrong, he had already apologized. We began to work together in 2006, encouraged by the community of San Luis, Costa Rica, to see and hear the women of their village and share what we learned with the world. We moved on to other parts of the world, always speaking with women, mostly older than we are, and always going to rural areas. We talk to the people who are seldom seen or heard, old, rural, female. We ask the same questions in every place, questions designed to be gentle, to elicit stories about themselves and the places they know best. Working together as women, with women students assisting us, with our children, or pregnant, brings up obvious comparisons. We share things in common. We work, we raise kids, we struggle to lead lives on our own terms as much as possible, but we also find distance. We are rich, we travel, we are foreign. We have only one child, not many. We are not married. We leave our husband and child at home. We hear stories that fill us with admiration and amazement. A woman bravely tricks the enemy in wartime. Another fixes supper for her husband and calmly gives birth. A woman wonders where her husband is, who left her and the children to go to the U.S. and never returned. Another recalls when she learned her husband lied to her and she contracted HIV. We look at each other and laugh in disbelief and awe at the Wamanrati woman's incredible beaded wedding skirt, which she pulls out of a house made of sticks and mud. Between interviews, we talk together about the tragedy and unfairness that is the reality of so many lives today. We share their sorrow, but we do not want them to console us. We also share their joys, their humor. They teach us to lead better lives too. Most importantly, we share their stories and their images. Seeing, listening, touching, recording can be, if done with care and sensitivity, acts of fraternity and sisterhood. acts of solidarity. So wrote Nancy Shepherd Hughes in her introduction to Death Without Weeping, an ethnography about child death and mothering in the slums of Brazil. Her partners and sources demanded solidarity. They wanted their stories heard and told. They wanted to see their lives change for the better. But we are better together than apart. When I meet a woman for the first time, almost always in her home, I'm totally focused on her. Even when I don't speak her language, my eyes stay with hers, not the translator. Staying engaged in a long interview requires a lot of energy. I need her to know that I hear her, that I'm interested, when I understand, and when I need something explained. But that means I miss so much. I don't see her home, what others are doing in it, or even what she is wearing. I am all ears.
For me, it's important to take in the visual information that can help accurately describe the woman's environment. While no photographic image is wholly truthful, these images are made as straightforward as possible. They are shot on black and white film and made in available natural light. We do not ask women to change their clothing. We do not ask women to pose. The images that are presented are straight prints with no post-production manipulation. Our real goal is to present these women as we've encountered them without romanticizing or exoticizing them.
We ask that you remember these women in all kinds of times and places, that their stories motivate you to make the world better for them in many ways along many routes, that you're not satisfied with happiness in poverty. Happiness when having enough is much, much better. You can always find ways to make the world more just, and you do not have to travel around the world to hear and see stories like these. The opportunity to make positive social change is presented every day, close to home. Please learn to see these women, recall their faces, their beauty, their humanity. Please listen with care, with sensitivity, and act in solidarity. Thank you.